All right, we'll go ahead and call the City Council Caucus meeting, January 17th, to order. First item on the agenda this evening is our oath of office ceremony. You guys need to run. For Lieutenant Brad Foley. Before we do his oath of office, I just wanted to quickly call out the other individuals that were a part of this promotion process. Brad, you have an amazing group of individuals that are ready to take on the role of lieutenant. That will be amazing once those positions are available to them. We had Scott Rusing, Frank Santee, Lindsay Lang, and Eric McDonald. And I just wanted to thank all of them for stepping up and being willing to take a leadership role within the Erlanger Fire Department. You guys are the next generation of leaders, and I'm so excited that you are ready and willing to take that next step. So thank you so much for going through the process. I truly appreciate it, and you all were so outstanding. All right, so we'll go ahead and do.
I just want to echo that as well. I mean, as I've told all of them, we're very proud of having the courage to put themselves out there like that. I think it says a lot for them personally and says a lot for our department. So with that being said, so our promotions came out to be one promotion, and it's going to be Lieutenant Brad Foley. He will go to, or he's actually on red shift, is where he's at. And it's an exciting thing to see people advance. Brad came to us from Point Pleasant Fire Department as a captain. So, you know, getting him was a huge step. And he started out as a firefighter medic, and now he's going back through those ranks again. So to see that, it's exciting. So I look forward to some great things from Brad. All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
That's okay. All right, state your name. I do solemnly swear to do my duty as a shift lieutenant for the City of Erlanger to the best of my ability, to serve my commanding officers with respect and dignity, to serve the citizens of the City of Erlanger with compassion, courage, and integrity, and to uphold the laws and constitutions of the United States of America, the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and the City of Erlanger. So help me God. Congratulations. All right. And thank you for all of you guys being here and supporting Brad. All right, next item on the agenda is the flagship park ordinance. Councilwoman Jennifer Jasper Lucas.
She doesn't have one. Okay. She doesn't have one at all.
We know it. We have to get another one. We have to buy another one.
Okay.
And we don't have the budget for it, so
Okay.
we have to put it in the next fiscal year's budget.
I'll just scoot over here with Mr. Skidmore. So I know we had a lot of conversation about, and I really just want this to be a dialogue amongst council about this, but I know we had a lot of conversation about this and kind of heard from a lot of different parties on their input. I just made a couple of notes that I wanted to mention, and I know that other council members probably have some thoughts on this as well. And I have some questions as well. I know that Mr. Wolfeck shared Ms. Recker's open records request that my interpretation was there were no complaints received, formal complaints received specific to the running group until now over the past few years. I think we went back 5 years. So I just wanted to make that note. I did want to talk about thoughts from council on adding a limitation to the number of participants in the running group based on the number of parking spaces. I understand the concerns about the number of cars pulling in and out of the parking spaces with people, especially kids, walking around. My son played Lions football. I picked him up for 5 years at the Lions Club parking lot with lots of kids running around after practice. So that's a huge parking lot compared to Flagship. And I share those concerns because it's just a lot of moving pieces. I know there's been some concerns from residents about running group participants not living in Erlanger, and I just wanted to clarify, I don't believe that we give, which there are people that live, there are running group participants that do live in Erlanger. So I just want to make that clear. But I want to ask, do we give preference currently when doing any kind of field reservations or anything like that at any of our other parks to residents versus non-residents or anything like that?
So we do a lottery for baseball and soccer fields, and we do not require the teams to present rosters to us.
Okay.
We've never done that. There's never, it's been an issue with that. We will, like Silver Lake Recreation reserves the fields, so for their camps. Erlanger Ellesmere Soccer used to reserve the fields, but that league is no longer together. But other than that, no, we do not require rosters or anything like that.
I didn't think so. I just wanted to clarify. But many of the participants in the running group do live in Erlanger, so I just want to make sure that that is clear. And according to the way that we have drafted the draft ordinance, we still would not be allowing any games or organized practices from any other team. So that's how the draft is right now. So thoughts on, or other questions, I guess, about the parking, and maybe adding a limitation about that. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that. Ms. Reckers.
I would think that the parking limitation wouldn't necessarily make it into the ordinance. That'd be something more done by Sherry's office, like with other reservation, the reservation process. Am I correct in that, or is that something that we would actually want to put into the law?
So whenever we reserve anything, it's just for, like, say if it's a field, it's just for the field. They're not reserving like the parking lot for just them. We don't give them restrictions.
Okay.
We can't, we've had teams that wanted us to reserve the parking lots just for the team, and we would not allow it. It was for anyone that was there to enjoy the park.
Okay. And as I understand, and I've talked to many parents, because those parents live in Erlanger. It's a whole bunch of Erlanger kids, which is great. We want our parks to be open to everybody, but it's great that they're Erlanger kids. And a lot of them just drop off. So it is, and as she mentioned, there's always going to be safety concerns when you're doing a drop off, because kids will be running out into the parking lot, as we see with any park. And just to echo what Ms. Jasper Lucas said, the way that the proposed ordinance has been modified, it's keeping the original ordinance intact, but excluding running groups. So it would still not be, open to volleyball, leagues and rentals and soccer, and no games, competitions, scrimmages, meets of any kind among organizations or between organizations. So they can't compete among themselves. Like it would be strictly if running groups choose to reserve it through Sherry's office, it would be only for that purpose of practice as it's been presented. So, sorry, just wanted to further clarify that.
I don't know what is going on with this microphone, but I'm having to hold my hand down on it to keep it off. To keep it off. Like, it won't turn off. Sorry. I don't want it to be on the whole time. It won't turn off. His doesn't have a sticker on it like mine does. Sorry, I was pushing the wrong button. I'm sorry. His does not have a sticker, and on mine you can't see what it looks like, but on his you can. I think Ms. Kyle had her hand
Kyle.
up. I'm sorry.
Yes. My concern is not with the team that practices there presently, because it sounds like they haven't had any issues, but my concern is that once other teams find out that, hey, this is a good place to go, that we might have like St. Henry's, Lloyd High School, the track team, always looking for places to practice. And in my mind, there's so many other places that seem more appropriate to me. I mean, I've been to Flagship Park with my grandchildren, and it's a nice little spot to go, and they enjoy it immensely. I've walked the pathway, and my concern would be if I'm a mom walking a baby in a stroller, am I going to get knocked over by one of these high school runners? But like, when you look at some of the parks, like I think it's President's Park in Edgewood, I think that's where my grandson played soccer. That's a nice field for running. Now, it's in the grass. There is a pathway that goes around one edge, but I just don't see why this park, I just don't think it's big enough, or it's not appropriate for people running, I don't think, in my mind. And I've had several citizens complain to me about, like they said, they didn't make a formal complaint to Erlanger City. A lot of people don't want to make complaints. I don't know why they're so afraid. They always call me and, well, will you take care of it for me? I'm like, well, okay. Yeah, and I hate doing that because they need to learn. But a lot of them hesitate, because there was one lady, I remember, she said that she couldn't get out of her driveway. One of the cars parked and blocked her car. Well, I mean, you get some of these teenagers driving, and I know how they are. I taught them for years. They might do that. Let their car right there, and then there you go. And to me, it just seems like it's unfair to say, no organized teams except for runners. And like I said, I understand the problem with finding appropriate places for the kids. I mean, you got to be safe with them. It's dangerous when you see them running on the roads and stuff. But I'm just afraid that a lot of schools are going to figure this out and say, hey, let's go over there. That's where this team is, and you're going to be overrun. And and I'm trying to protect the people that live there too. I mean, it's a nice little park. Not that they're the only ones that use it. I use it, and I don't live over there, but I like that park. It's just really nice. And like I said, the pathway's not really that big. If you're walking, somebody's running, I can see that could be a problem. So that's just what I think.
Ms. Reckers?
And I just want to clarify, like, it's not teenage kids. It's through K through 8. Yeah, these aren't. And it's going to be I mean, it all has to go through Sherry's office for permitting, and they will never allow two teams at the same time. That's just not how the process is designed. So there would at least be that control in place, regardless if multiple teams wanted to use it. That wouldn't be an option on a particular night. I mean, it would still be through the permitting process, as we're aware. So I wanted to clarify. It's I think K through 8. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I remember the young lady. She spoke very eloquently.
Any other council members? Oh, Mr. Hermes.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. A couple points that I wanted to mention, and kind of to what Mrs. Kyle was saying about the complaints received. I don't know that it's fair to count those because, yeah, that one woman had mentioned specifically that she does not call. In her words were, she doesn't want to be that woman. So I don't know if it's fair to say it's not an issue because of that. And then as far as limiting the number of runners based on the parking, I mean, that was the other thing I was thinking. These are mostly grade schoolers and they're not driving. So that's kind of tough to regulate that way. But then on top of it, I think that would be really hard to enforce. You know, who are they going to call when there's too many cars parked there, you know, for the number of people there? Is that a police issue? Or are they going to be calling administration, or I don't know, probably a council member first. But those were some of my thoughts on that. Thank you for the opportunity.
Before I call any, are there any other council members that have any questions or comments about this? Okay, Ms. Jasper-Lucas.
I just wanted to address what Mr. Hermes said. I guess my point in saying the number of participants that that would be part of our process, we would ask them at the beginning of the season when they made the reservation, how many participants do you have? And if there's more than X number, whatever number we chose, if that was the route we went, you know, let's just say, I mean, I don't know exactly how many parking places there are, but let's just say, you know, there were 50 parking spaces and there were 120 participants. And we had determined that that was too many because the number of cars needed to come pick up that many participants would be a lot, or more than what we felt like the parking lot could handle. So we wouldn't allow it at all. It wouldn't be like a daily thing of counting cars or participants. It would be you have too many participants in your group, therefore you would not fit the criteria to use flagship. That was my thought on that.
So what's the direction of council on this? I mean, there's an ordinance, a draft ordinance right here in front of you all. I mean, do you want me to put it on oh, it was emailed to you guys. So do you want me to move forward and put it on the agenda for the February council meeting for a first reading, or are there changes, or what are you guys thinking?
Are we going to give people an opportunity to talk from the audience before we talk about that?
I don't know. I mean, do you guys have any changes to this draft ordinance? I mean, we typically don't have public comment right now, and I don't know if there's a sign-up sheet. Is there a sign-up sheet back there? Oh, there is? Okay. Okay. Lemon, can you bring it up for me, please? Okay, we have two individuals that signed up. Mark Tobler. Would you like to come and speak? There's going to be a 3-minute minimum, and if you just state your full name and your where you're from, please.
3-minute maximum.
Yeah. Did I say minimum?
You did.
Did I? Sorry. Oh.
Hi, I'm Mark Tobler. I live at 4019 Deer Chase Drive. I'm here speaking against allowing organized sports in Flagship Park. A little background, I was on the Flagship Park Design Committee. I went through the whole design process, what we shouldn't have in the park. And this was an area of contention. what apparatuses we should put in the park. You know, there's no basketball court there for a reason. Also, a little background, my sons run cross country. They ran middle school for St. Henry, they run for the high school. I knew we weren't allowed to have organized sports there. So where did the middle school run? They ran at Silver Lake. One year, the next year they ran at President's Park. There are other options. Walkers, people fishing, parking. How do you regulate parking? How many people go there fishing every night, all day long? I see them there at 6 in the morning fishing, up using the playground equipment. Nope, you can't park there and use the playground because we have runners running today. You close the park. Somebody sign up to park, you got to close the whole park. How do you enforce that? You put police at each end? That's all I got. Hopefully I didn't use my 3 minutes.
You're good. Thank you. All right, Scott Miners.
Scott Miners, 4023 Deer Chase. My concern, I'm against the change in the ordinance. My concern is when you reserve a baseball field, you reserve the baseball field. You reserve a soccer field, you reserve the soccer field. If somebody's on the soccer field, you have it reserved, you can kick them off the soccer field. If they don't want to go, you call the police officers and they tell them to go. What are you reserving at the park? The whole park, the whole running track, the woods that go around the track? So that's my concern. What happens when Miss Kyle's walking down the park and they get run into a bunch of 8th grade boys? And she gets mad and calls. Well, who's right, who's wrong? Who's allowed to be there, who's not allowed to be there? That's one of my concerns is, what are you reserving? You can't, soccer field's a soccer field, baseball field's a baseball field. Park, unless you're reserving the whole park, I don't understand what there is to reserve. Same goes, I don't know if the shelter up there is reservable or if that's still come and go as you coming, free to whoever. If somebody's having a birthday party up there, then you're gonna have a whole track team come up or cross-country team. That's not right to those people who just happen to have a birthday party and don't know the park is accessible to everybody, accessible to sports teams. But that's just my 2 cents. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Miners. Okay. Okay. All right. Come on up. If you can state your name and where you live.
My name is Emily Hanna. I live at 803 Fawn Drive, which is in Erlanger. We've been here for 14 years. I've had 3 children on the cross-country team. My oldest is in high school. And to address your question, Ms. Kyle, high schoolers don't go in parks like that. They run the highway. They run DeVue Park, never without any pushback from the parks that I've ever heard. But they don't run a flagship-type park. Would other grade schools perhaps, but as it's been stated, you can have a sign-in sheet or you have your reservation procedure that would prevent the duplication. As to cars, it's a drop-off for the most part. You have 2 entrances to this underutilized and expensive park. It is not a problem. Parents drop off, they come back and get the kids. A large number of them, my kids included, typically walk up there or ride their bikes. People parking in front of a driveway, I can't even envision how that happens. There's about 17 or 18 spots in that ancillary lot that's off of Deer Chase. I spend at least half the practices walking when the kids are running. There's 2 or 3 cars parked there. It is not an issue. The parking lot is largely open. I can tell you, having lived for 14, almost 15 years in that neighborhood, that park is completely underutilized. We don't have enough money to fix Ms. Jasper Lucas's microphone, but we have a very expensive park. And right now the debate is over whether we let children run in that park. The Blessed Sacrament team has always been respectful. There's never been a complaint from people walking up there because the children would always bypass into the grass or out of the way. It is no need to reserve the entire park for this practice. It's always open. There are always families there. In fact, a lot of the kids will then join in and run with our kids when they're running. We've had people join the team from hanging out in that park in that setting. That park is utilized by the younger siblings who don't run because they use the playground equipment during that time. We practice 2 times a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, for under 2 hours from middle of August through about mid to late October. That's what we are talking about here. This is not a rash and a flood of usage that is going to cause 10 different what ifs. It is just not going to happen. And I can tell you that if parking's an issue, then you need to stop letting the baseball fields that are rented behind, the baseball field that's in the little neighborhood, the Spring Valley one, because that's got a tiny parking lot. And when there's a baseball game there, they spill all over that neighborhood. So if parking's an issue, then we can't have parking. Lions Club, I mean, you're right. It's a zoo. So I guess if parking and if that's our standard, then we can't rent our parks out for any kind of organized event whatsoever. A birthday party will have the same impact on parking as what is being concerned here. So I would appreciate that, and I know my time's up, but I would appreciate is if you consider the fact that there is something to be said about no actual complaints being made about this group, because it's been respectful, it's been properly using this park, no whistles, no loud noises, for 4 years, 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hannah. Please state your name and your address, please.
My name is Kathy Vogt, and I live off of Baywood Circle. My concern is what is the limit of how many children are allowed there at the same time? I mean, I think the gentleman here said 30 to 50 were in the park at that time running. Is that correct? Okay, that's quite a few people. You said maybe put a limit on it. And then my other concern is, so if other schools start signing up, so is this could be every day of the week? I mean, 6 days a week? I'm asking you all. Could this be 6 days a week that there's 30 to 50 kids up there running? Well, 30 to 50 kids to me are a lot.
Sorry, she has the answer to your question.
Oh, she does? Okay.
So on the weekends, we allow for people to reserve the shelters, to have birthday parties and everything.
Right.
So we were going to limit it to Monday through Friday.
So every day, there could be a track team up there, 30 to 50 kids up there running or through there. Is that correct?
That is correct, but in reality, what are the chances of that actually happening?
I don't know.
To be honest
I mean,
with
if
you.
people find out about that, I live there, I take my grandkids up there. I don't watch them on the days that they are running, but I do go walk around there with my grandkids. And if there's 30 to 50 kids running on the same area that I'm walking them, I babysit them at a certain time. So if we're up there walking around, I mean, to me, that is kind of, I don't like that part. And so is there a limit? What is the limit on the number of kids that can be up there at that time?
We have not set a limit.
Okay. But that just seems like a lot to me, and every day of the week, that's a possibility. You can't say, what are the chances? Because it's a possibility that could happen someday. Okay? That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Joe Doretta. I live in Brightleaf Subdivision. I am a cross-country coach for Notre Dame. My daughter does run for the Blessed Sacrament team. I would like to point out my daughter does not go to Blessed Sacrament. It's a diocesan team. The majority of this team actually live here in the Erlanger community. The flagship park is an amazing park. I mean, you guys did a great job when you built it. It's not built for ball fields. It's not built for soccer. It's not built for basketball. There's nice, runnable paths. You can walk, you can run. It is an amazing park, which is why we run there. There were some comments about running into other parks in the neighborhood. Other parks mentioned, particularly President's, is significantly smaller than this park. That's one of the reasons why I spoke earlier in December about this. This park is a perfect spot for children, 8th grade and below, to run, where parents can keep a safe eye on them while not having to worry about crossing intersections or doing anything else to get hurt. I can attest, 3 weeks ago, I was running my friend right in front of Mary's and Dixie Highway. We had the crosswalk. I went in front of him. I had a bright yellow shirt on. I don't know how the truck didn't see me. My friend right behind me, the truck pulled out, didn't even stop, missed my friend by inches, and never hit the brake once. And I say this, Miss Hannah's daughter runs on my cross-country team at Notre Dame. My biggest fear when I run Dixie Highway is the sidewalks. We mentioned earlier about the paths in the park. Those paths are plenty wide for kids to walk into the grass to go around people. They're significantly wider than most sidewalks you find on streets. It is a very safe spot for our children to go and run, and just, it burns my heart that we have these conversations and we have people denying why we want kids not to run in the parks we built. And I'll settle on this. There has been a lot of discussion on parking and limiting people. I can attest there are 8 kids that carpool from Brightleaf over to Flagship for this practice and come back. I just find it very difficult when I sit here and start thinking about how do I limit it. We have 8 kids coming from our subdivision, getting dropped off and coming back. That is one car. We're not talking about high schoolers that have multiple cars coming and a lot of parking. These are grade school kids we're encouraging to get out and run in our parks. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Durrett. Please just state your name and your address.
Joseph Nylander. I live at 3300 McCowan Drive in Taylor Mill, Kentucky. I am the head coach of this Blessed Sacrament cross country team. This is the first time I'm able to speak in front of you all, and at this time I would like to thank you guys, thank the city of Erlanger for, one, letting us use this park in the time that we have been able to use it. The reason that we came upon the park was our team had grown by the way that we do things. We mentioned that it's not technically a Blessed Sacrament only. We're comprised of probably 10 different schools. We have a lot of homeschool kids who run for this team who would not be given this opportunity to run for a school. So when we found this park, it was safe. It was hardly anybody was there. I scoped this out for months before we started running. I've checked with numerous parents who live in the area about concerns that may be brought about when we first started. The team was roughly about 100 runners at that time, and that's kind of where we are. 100 kids do not show up for practice every Tuesday and Thursday. Those are the 2 days that we practice. In the summer when we start, it's in the middle of July, and it goes until almost the end of October. So Tuesday and Thursday of every week, it starts out from 7 to 8:30, and then when school starts, we bring it back for the kids, and then it starts from 6 to 7:30. When we run, these kids are not in bunches. They are all spread out because of their abilities. Younger, probably going to be a little bit slower. The older kids are going to be faster. When we started this, the first thing I said is that we have to be the best neighbor that we can be. If someone is on the course walking, regardless if it's a young person or our elderly group, we have to get out of the way. They have to have the right of way when they are on that path. We are very observant and we are very prudent of making sure that we incorporate anyone at that park at the time we are there to participate. We have grown-up, older generational people who come to the park when we are there because they are able to walk or run with these kids or with other residents in Erlanger that they know. So it's not just us. Yes, ma'am. Okay. So I like to say, you know, I can talk about this all night. I appreciate the opportunity. I know I'm not a resident, but I feel like I am because we have been there so long. And I did not know that this ordinance was in place when we found this park. So I do apologize for that. But when I started, I called the office here and told them what we were doing, and really I didn't get any pushback. So thank you again. I appreciate the time here. God bless.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Kyle?
I have a thought. Could we maybe limit the, where it says except for runners, and we could say of such and such an age? That way that would eliminate the high school people coming in, because if you're going to have a problem with parking, I would say it would be the high school people, because those kids drive. You know, they would be the ones driving. But if you've got these grade school kids, doesn't sound to me like they should be causing any parking problems. Maybe the parking problem came from one of the fishermen. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if the lady knew that either when she said something about it. So would that be an option, that we could limit the age group, that it's for, could we say grade school? Would that cover it? I mean, this team obviously has done no harm to anyone that I can see. You know, they've gone on all these years and nobody's has said anything about it. So obviously you're not causing any problems. It sounds like they're well-trained and polite. And
I mean, I could look into it. My concern on just first blush is we might create an equal protection issue if we're discriminating against older people. And maybe older is over 16, but it's still potentially
driving people.
Well, I get it, but I mean, I would want to look into that. I'm just, my initial reaction is I'd have a little concern with that.
Okay.
But I certainly can look into that if that would be the will of council to
I mean, I'm torn both
impose
ways. I can see everybody's side, you know, that you want to protect the park, that you don't want it overcrowded, but yet at the same time, these young kids, you know, gives them a shot at running and it's safe. Okay, that's just my thought.
Ms. Jasper Lucas?
I don't remember who said it. I think somebody said this isn't the type of park that high schoolers are probably going to run in. You said that, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just not, I mean, I agree. I don't think this is going to be the type of place that a high school team is probably going to want to reserve. I realize that, and I'm with Jack too. I think that we'd probably be opening I mean, not that somebody's going to, well, I don't know. People try to sue for things all the time that they shouldn't sue for. So, you know, we might be opening ourselves up to something that is unnecessary, discriminatory, that we maybe don't need to. So, I don't know how much chance there would be of a high school team trying to reserve it, I guess.
Ms. Kyle?
I guess then what we could do is we could go ahead with the ordinance, and then if we have any problems that pop up, we can always change the ordinance back and say, dude, all the problems, complaints, et cetera, then just pull it back. How's that? That way, this team, they've not caused any trouble, you know, and that little girl, when she spoke, she was very eloquent. I admired her for what she did. But, you know, and I'm impressed by the people that run the team, too. They're very professional. And I mean, they shouldn't have any parking problems with these kids. That shouldn't be an issue, I don't think. Because parents are not going to hang around for a practice, I'll tell you that right now. Even baseball, they drop them off and go off. So maybe just keep it the same and try it out.
Ms. Nicely?
Thank you for everyone that spoke tonight. I can understand both viewpoints. I think I'm kind of in agreement with some of the other council members that we do want our children to be healthy and safe, and starting out young, running and wanting to be outside in our parks. That's what we pay for our parks and the upgrade of all of our parks in the city. And unless there is a parking issue or something, I think that there should be no reason why they wouldn't be allowed to run in the park. It's just, I can see both sides, I really can, but I think that we need to keep our children safe, and that's what the parks are for. Thank you.
So it sounds like we're going to move forward with making these changes, and we'll put this on for first reading February, the beginning of February. Okay. All right. Next item on the agenda is the Gary Meyer Emergency Fund. Councilman Tyson Hermes.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to keep this open for dialogue among council members, but just first I'd like to summarize what's brought us to this point. On September 20th, 2022, Erlanger Council voted in favor of a budget amendment that transferred $5 million from unrestricted reserves to the general fund. I'm sorry, unrestricted reserves of the general fund to the capital fund. While the amendment did a great job of enumerating restrictions and items that money can be spent on, it did not set any precedent, priority, or establish circumstances that would allow this money to be spent. While the money can be spent on capital only, there's nothing that restricts that money from being spent first in the fiscal year 23-24 budget and socking away the overages back into the unrestricted reserves at the end of the year. Excuse me. When Councilman Meyer spoke about this fund, he explained that the money would serve as a savings, so it could be available in the event of a Toyota-type downturn. Councilwoman Jasper Lucas said it would be good to have the money available in the event of a natural disaster like in eastern Kentucky. So here's point number one. Instead of having this money lumped into the money available in the capital fund, I would like it to be its own fund and line itemed on the budget so it can be tracked and easily monitored by council. The second point is I'd like to establish some rules that would allow the city to dip into these funds. I'm looking for advice from council here. What makes it okay to use that money? Some of the ideas, as I spoke with Mrs. Kyle before the meeting, she had said, in the case of a large loss of revenue, that'd be a good rule to go by. That would be okay to dip into those funds. I also thought in the case of a natural disaster or in the event of an act of God that would impact some capital of the city. Of course, we could always have a fail-safe at the end that would say, upon the vote of the majority of council, we could dip into that as well. But just so that council is aware. Any other ideas?
Ms. Jasper Lucas.
I just have a question about when the change happened to the agenda, because I printed it out a couple of days ago and it didn't say Gary Meyer Emergency Fund.
Do you have a question?
Yeah.
That pertains to what Councilman Hermes?
That is my question.
I don't know what I changed.
I don't know.
I printed this out 2 days ago and it didn't say anything about Gary Meyer Emergency Fund.
That's what it was requested as.
Oh, because when it was originally sent, that wasn't what was on there.
That's what it was originally requested as. Do you have a question? that
So the
pertains to
agenda
this?
changed and it wasn't sent out to council?
It's in your link. If you clicked the link,
I did, and then I clicked on it again today and it had changed. I don't understand why we're calling this the Gary Meyer Emergency Fund. That is my
there has been
question.
a request to name it
By whom?
Councilman Hermes.
So the new fund that he's referring to, he wants to call it the Gary Meyer Emergency Fund?
Correct.
Oh,
Do you have a question about?
that was my question.
Okay. Are there any other questions by council members? Ms. Kyle?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment.
Sure.
When I first saw this too, I thought, wow, what's this? But anyway, that's why I asked Mr. Hermes, because his name was behind it. And when he explained it to me, I thought, well, that's a good idea, because otherwise it's sitting there and we can spend it on sidewalks, roads, whatever, without any blinking of an eye, and I think he's tending to be more on the cautious side, and you all know that I like to be on the cautious side. So I think it's a good idea that we do say stipulated for such and such an emergency or whatever you want to put in there. And then I like the idea at the end, too, that it has to be approved by council. So in other words, if somebody says, hey, we don't have enough money, we need to fix the sidewalk, or we need a new fire truck, and it's not in the budget, blah, 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 council can say, okay, we've got that money there, let's go. So that's my opinion on that.
Okay, Ms. Reckers?
So a couple of things. A capital fund wouldn't be used for sidewalks. I don't think that that's an approved.
It's on there.
It is on there? Okay, that's surprising. I think the initial intent of Mr. Meyer and the majority of council at the time when we did that was for, to have that investment in Erlanger's capital needs in the future. As for like a large loss of revenue, that's a situation where the city needs to amend the budget and spend less money. I wouldn't say that cutting into that fund is the solution if we were to lose one of our larger revenue driving companies. You know, I've requested data and been reviewing because I wanted to see where our revenue comes from, and if we have a strategy in place for a situation like that. So I think that this fund wouldn't necessarily be appropriate for a large loss of revenue. That's not what my intention was when I agreed with Mr. Meyer on that. It's more of that having that money there for future needs, like fire engines and, you know, police car fleets or equipment, whatever they need in that regard. That's where my head was. That's, I believe, where Mr. Meyer's head was when he made that suggestion that council approved.
Would there be a good way of, like, could we say for large capital purchases that aren't either ongoing or yearly, or, I mean, how would we say that? What could be a rule that we could put on that money? I mean, I know what you're saying, and I agree. I think that it's perfect for that.
I mean, we would look at we really need a strategic plan. I think at the end of the day, that's the ultimate conversation we should be having. But what does that look like? We know that we need a public works facility. We committed to that. Everyone, but Ms. Wilson was here when we committed to that during COVID. We made that investment in public works when we made that decision to use COVID dollars to purchase the land on Montgomery Road for that reason. Like, we know that we have that upcoming expense. We're getting bids in our email. Like, this is happening. Mm-hmm. What else is out there? So I think that conversation needs to be had before we start earmarking it for future projects. But it needs to be spent on future projects. The majority of council at the time when we voted in support of Mr. Meyer's amendment did not support a winding down of our unreserved funds. That still stands. That's my preference is not to wind that down. But if we had future stated earmark recommendations as part of a strategic plan, then we could be having a different conversation about what that money should be used for. So, just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. I have something if nobody else. So in summary, I believe this is the final step that's necessary to fulfill Gary Meyer's vision. He wanted to create an emergency savings fund like what Dave Ramsey recommends. While I didn't agree with the shift of these funds, I respected the decision of council as a whole. And since we shifted the money, we need to line item the fund and establish some rules on how we use it. Thank you.
Is this something that needs to have further discussion in a separate meeting?
Yeah, and I think that I did have that question for Jack as well, and I'm sorry to spring this on you. But, so how would we handle those rules? Would that be a municipal order among council?
No, I think we'd want to amend this ordinance.
Oh, okay.
With the understanding that with each budget season and each amended budget, in theory, you're doing whatever you want to do with money anyway, right? I mean, no matter what you put in this ordinance and what set of rules you put in this ordinance, you're always, by a majority of council, can change all of it anyway.
Ms. Kyle?
What I'm thinking of is we want to protect the money that's there. That's why we agreed to move it, and I did agree to move it. I voted with the majority of council on that. And my thinking is we don't know what's going to happen to the economy, so we want to make sure that we have enough money to buy a police car, fire truck, or whatever we need. Now, is it going to hurt anything to put a specific, on that particular $5 million, say this can only be spent in case of an emergency at the discretion of council, so council would decide if it was an emergency or not, or is that not a good thing to do? That's my question.
I just wanted to chime in real quick. So I just wanted to understand, so right now, the $5 million is sitting in the Capitol. So Tyson is proposing to move this into its own special fund, kind of like a reserve fund. Several cities have this, and there's different stipulations. So we can put together, Jack, am I correct in saying we can put together something for this fund and bring it to council for them to approve? Many cities have this as like you say, when something happens with the economy, so they don't have to, the revenue is not budgeted for our fire truck, but we are in dire need of a new fire truck. So, I just wanted to get clarification since it's currently sitting in Capitol and we would need to create this new fund. Kind of like what we did for the park fund.
And my question is, since it's in the capital fund, it can be used regardless of what council says, right? If to buy something or not? No? Still has to have council approval?
Well, and that's where I've always, to be brutally honest, been confused by this whole thing, because, the executive branch can only spend the money allocated by council's budget each year, all right? So if you budget $5 million for police, I'm just using round numbers, then that's, we've never line itemed that, so the police department would have up to $5 million each year to spend. So, it's not like anybody can go out and buy a fire truck, a police car, or increase salaries without it being a part of a budget or some future budget amendment. So, we can put whatever rules on any of this council wants, but it, again, is always going to just be subject to a budget. Hypothetically, if you put $5 million into a reserved fund, but now we have a budget that we're going to lose police officers if we don't increase pay of police officers, realistically, you're just going to amend the ordinance that created the reserve fund if it doesn't meet one of the parameters you've put in place, and you're going to create a budget that properly pays for the city services. So I've always, I actually enjoyed debating with Gary on this offline a lot, just because I didn't understand it, because again, council has the ultimate power of the budget and the ultimate power of how the city spends money within the budget. So if anything, these are almost like guideposts or rules that I guess council should follow when doing those budgets, but then council can at any time change those rules. Am I talking in circles or? No, speaking truth. All right, sorry.
I think my issue always has been, it's fine as long as we're all here. You know, as long as we're talking about the same people in this room that made the decisions, it's a non-issue. We know what it's all for. I'm saying if that money's still sitting there in 20 years and someone goes, you know what, why don't we do, you know, a new city building or whatever? You know, we got the money there and not realizing what it was originally for. I mean, I hope we don't have to touch it for 20 years. But, you know, the reality is that's probably not going to be the case. But I just don't want a generation in the future to have either not known or to forget what that money was for.
Ms. Jasper Lucas.
To piggyback on what Ms. Recker said, is there a plan to come up with a strategic plan so that we had some guidelines? What's the timeline on that?
We're working on it. That's been a topic of conversation with our executive leadership team and the department heads. It's part of our budget process.
So what's the timeline?
We do not have a timeline on a presentation to council at this time. Any other conversation about this topic?
So I just want to make sure so that Kara and I or someone else understands. Do we have a to-do list, or is this something council wants to continue to discuss? I just want to know what action items, if any, are expected of either Kara or myself on this.
My gut would be to say that we discuss this again in next month's caucus, just for discussion still.
Okay.
It would give everybody a chance to think about it and let the idea marinate.
Okay. We'll go ahead and move on. Next item on the agenda is the budget amendment. I believe this is in front of you guys, the executive memo that just explains, you know, the changes that, I'll just read this. As many of you are aware, changes within the Building and Zoning and Codes Enforcement Department took place last year due to personnel changes. These personnel changes resulted in Public Works assuming the responsibility of working with Planning and Development Services of King County to work through the building and zoning permits plus building inspections. Public Works has also taken over the responsibilities regarding code enforcement. The budget amendment that we are requesting simply takes the line items associated with building, zoning, and codes enforcement out of general government and moves them into Public Works. This topic was discussed with John Chamberlain, our auditor. This was the mechanism to properly account for the changes in the responsibilities. And you will see that in the budget amendment, it's $217,000 that comes out of Gen Gov and goes into PW. Anybody have any questions? Yes.
So the 217,000, if we moved building and zoning to PDS, and that was all the money for building, zoning, and
Codes enforcement?
codes enforcement, sorry. Wouldn't the number go down since PDS now does part of the work and not be the same?
Correct, and you'll see that associated in the next fiscal year's budget. But there were already existing expenses that went into this current budget, which is what the $217,000 represents. So Mark Stewart's salary and his payout of his vacation, Daryl Jewett's, Steve Canfield's, who are still employees of our now Public Works Department. Their salaries are included in that 217. And then the other ancillary items for building and zoning and codes enforcement. Printing and duplicating, payment to board members, the uniforms and clothing, technical supplies, which is the piece of software, dues and subscriptions, and travel and training. So it's very possible that not all of this is going to be utilized. However, from John Chamberlain's request, we're taking one line item and moving it from Gen Gov, and we're putting it into PW. So you probably will see remaining balance.
Did anybody get raises?
Yes. Additional responsibilities were distributed across members of the Public Works Department.
Did anybody not get raises
Yeah. In the Public Works Department?
that was moved over?
Anybody that received additional responsibilities due to the change from GenGov to PW potentially received increases in their salaries to accommodate the new responsibilities.
Can we receive a pre and post salary comparison?
Sure, I can do that for you.
Can you send that to all of council?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Eckers?
This says budget amendment number 3. Is it budget amendment number 1?
No. it's
This is
number
the
3.
third one we've had?
Yep.
Okay. That's right, sorry. So with the overage, do we know what the difference, what that pool of funds looks like between what we would, because we now have 3 less FTE, and I understand some was utilized but prior to the departure of that department to PDS. Do we know what that looks like? I'm asking because we don't have enough microphones, but you're
We
saying we
don't-
have to wait till the next fiscal year. But if it's something that we could just keep in Gen Gov and purchase.
We can buy a microphone.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
When you said that at the beginning, I was taken back because
Well, I mean, technically, we do not have that budgeted, so that will be an additional expense. It's just like we had to pull a chair from the firehouse.
Sure.
We had a spare, we just don't happen to have a spare microphone around.
Okay. No, I was just wondering what that pool of funds looks like. Because I know
There
that
will
this
be
is.
money left in Gen Gov that we haven't pulled over, so
So aside from the 217 that's moving, and I understand, because we did, when CTI moved into Gen Gov, and like I understand, it was the same process with the auditors. It's a simple process move. I totally understand that. I'm just trying to understand like what's going to be slated, because it's probably going to be, close to $100,000 that's not going to be used, right? Am I close? Like, what's the plan for that money? That just seems like a lot of money to nothing's.
there is no plan.
There's no plan yet?
It didn't move over. The stuff that we're not using.
No, I understand that. What's the plan with it after it's moved, after we vote?
No,
Less the
dollar
salaries.
amount that is being moved over is associated with the salaries.
It's only salaries?
Salaries and then other expenses. The salaries are $193.
So everything else is being paid out of the initial allocation from Gen Gov for that line item? I guess I'm trying to understand if we don't have 3.
We only,
I don't want to say these salaries out.
yeah, so we only moved
No,
over.
that's fine. I mean, it's public
2
record, but I totally understand.
We only moved over 2 salaries, 2 full-time salaries and half of a previous salary.
Okay.
Because they moved under
Sure.
Public Works.
I understand.
But there was vacation paid that had to be paid out. So the other money is still sitting in Gen Gov and it is not to be utilized. It's salary, but it is not, we don't have a full-time person there anymore.
No, I understand, but there's 3 people who are no longer with the city that were under that line item. I'm just trying to understand.
That was a contract employee, and that was under professional services, and that is still under Gen Gov.
Okay, so that doesn't move?
No.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just simply want to understand the mechanics here. So, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Any other questions, requests, concerns? Okay. All right, next item on the agenda is the task forces. So we have some current task forces that are out there, and I'll turn to the chairs of these task forces to either talk about the purpose of the task force, or if you don't want to talk about that and you just want to advocate for additional members of the task force. But I'll just start with the Parks Master Planning Task Force. Councilman Hermes.
Yes, Mayor. The purpose of this task force is to talk about the master plans that have been produced and produce more master plans, and then also working on funding the improvements in the plans in the parks master plan. In some cursory discussions, we've begun to come up with a 20-year plan on how money is spent and the priority of projects, and I would request that we continue this task force.
Okay. City beautification? Ms. Nicely, sorry.
That's right. Yes, we met today at the Public Works Department, and our next meeting is Tuesday, February 21st at 5 p.m. And everybody is welcome. The public is welcome. I've been trying to get more people to attend. I even announced at Erlanger Business Council that I attend on Tuesday mornings. Some of the projects we're working on with Public Works is the Bonded Lock, Stevenson Road, Riggs, basically beautifying the city and welcoming any ideas people have. And we were presented a couple years out, like a 5-year plan, 10-year plan we're trying to work on so we can budget the money. So anybody that's welcome to join, we welcome all. Thank you.
Okay, there was the fire.
That's me. Oh, I'm sorry.
We're not on 6 yet.
We're still on task force.
Calm down now. I know you're excited.
All right, Mr. Gatlin, I'll go ahead and talk about that one as well, if that's okay. I was part of it with Gary Meyer with the fire department, and I've spoken with the chief, and we're going to pick back up in February, maybe March. We'll get with that. Gary Meyer was part of that. Ms. Jasper Lucas was. Mr. Height Hermes was, and we welcome everybody as well, too. This is the future of the fire task force, kind of kicking around ideas, what their needs may be in the future, times of calls, different things we're kicking around, how their ideas of how we can help them have the best department continuing down the road. We have a great department right now, so I'll get with you, Chief, and get a time set up for maybe next month, and everybody's welcome to join. Thank you.
All right, Cherry Hill.
I realized after reading the municipal order on task forces that we do not have a mission statement, and I apologize for that. I would say our mission statement is to stop semis from driving through Cherry Hill. So I just came up with that. We will continue to meet. We do have our next meeting scheduled for February 13th, and the goal for this would be to someday not have to have the task force anymore, that there will be no more semis.
All right, and then the new one that Mr. Hermes just created.
Oh, yes, keeping an eye on Kenton County. Yes, I'd like to continue that as well. We're just kind of starting that one.
Okay, and then, okay, was there any other participation? Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay. Yes.
Quick question about that one, and I meant to email Mr. Hermes, but since you brought it up, is there a way for us to get a copy automatically emailed to us of the agenda for those meetings? And are they available to watch
Yes.
live online?
So
Yeah,
if you
I'm
go
pretty sure
onto,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
if you go onto the website, the Kenton County website, you can watch them through TBNK. And then their agenda, I believe they post it not only on their website, but then they do it on their Facebook page as well.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a way to have it automatically emailed.
I just didn't know. I know that like PDS sends us notifications of all of their, I mean, I always look at those to see if there's anything of interest, and then I would watch the meeting if there was something of interest that I was interested in. It would be nice if Kenton County would do that. I just didn't, I meant to Google it, and I didn't know if that was an option. Okay, thank you.
That would be an excellent thing to show up at the meeting and request. You can help us keep an eye.
Yeah, and I guess that's, I'll take this opportunity to talk about this. We have the mayor's group meeting on Saturday, and we are going to, one of the big topics of conversation amongst the mayors is going to be the increase in the payroll tax rate and the cap increase that just transpired last November by the county. So there's quite the conversation that's going around on that increase and how it impacts our not only our employees, but all of the employees within our city, our economic development opportunities. So our competitive advantage, when you take into consideration we had the lowest payroll tax rate compared to Boone County and Campbell County. We had a lowest cap compared to the two surrounding counties, so it's kind of odd that we would lose our competitive advantage to level the playing field with two other counties. However, it was done, and so we've been making a point to attend the fiscal court meetings to understand what other changes are potentially coming down the road. They just passed 2 additional taxes on Uber and Lyft riders, and then also for Airbnb. So these were 2 taxes that did not previously exist that were just voted on last Tuesday, and that will take effect. So we've got to start paying attention to this stuff because I feel guilty that the payroll tax rate increase and the cap increase went into place and not a single mayor in Kenton County had been discussed with about this. And then we were told we don't have a place in that conversation. So we do have a place in this conversation because each one of us has a vested interest in our city, in growing our city economically, and we need to make sure that we understand every single business within our city and what changes are going to impact them. I mean, I know from personal experience, I did not know until I received the letter from the county in the mail to the Hive. I mean, really? That's the way that we're going to communicate to our citizens and our business owners, and I mean, elected officials be damned. So we got to start paying attention. And the Airbnb tax and the Uber and Lyft tax, it had a few people in opposition, but not that many, and it didn't swing the vote. So that's the motivation behind this task force. And I don't know if there'll be any change, but heck, we got to try. So, yep.
So we have a ordinance against Airbnb in Erlanger that I'd like to bring to February caucus to have abolished. So, thank you.
Cool beans. We'll add it to the agenda. But they'll be taxed by the county. And all others, the VRBOs, all of that. Okay, are there any other Mr. Hermes? Oh, gosh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Yes, Small Business Task Force will continue, of course, and we did craft a mission statement, which I will send to Sherry. The task force, Small Business Task Force, promotes and encourages economic development, retention, and sustainability of our local business community. This includes promoting development and redevelopment opportunities through grant programs, supporting long-term planning, and encouraging growth and innovation. So.
All right, very good. Ms. Jasper-Lucas?
I would like to propose a new task force in response to the recent audit management notes and auditor recommendations. I would like to call it the Financial Accountability Task Force. I believe we have to ensure responsibility in spending taxpayer dollars, and there are many simple checks and balances that can be put into place to help our staff do this. We also have to ensure that we're not wasting taxpayer dollars because we aren't fully aware of spending details beyond what's in the budget and check register. This could maybe be a subcommittee of the existing budget task force, or it could be its own task force. Primary areas of concern would be the two items that were in the management letter. Secondary items of concern that I had after reading the management letter, or management notes, I'm sorry, are who has city credit cards, who has take-home vehicles, and evaluating all city assets and looking for potential waste. My thoughts would be that the task force would meet quarterly to review those items. Once they were addressed, the task force could be dissolved or may need to reconvene if management notes were provided on future audits.
Mr. Hermes.
I like the idea of that task force, but it seems like it would marry well with the budget task force.
I couldn't hear you, I'm sorry.
I said I like the idea of that task force, but it does seem like it would marry well with the budget task force, like it just could be an extension of that same task force.
I think the only difference, well, and I don't know how long your task force would be slated for, but the ad hoc budget committee meets one time for discussion, but before the budget, after the boot camp. So it's a short, very short-lived task force. I just don't, what do you?
I was thinking quarterly, but I mean, it probably does need to be its own just for that reason. So I mean, either way, it doesn't really matter, I guess.
Okay, anybody else?
You know what okay. We've got a Vulcan mind meld going on over here. What about a strategic plan task force? How about council help with this? And I nominate Rebecca Reckers as the chair. Are you up for it? Seriously? Okay, cool.
I nominate you as the coach or the vice chair.
Okay.
Vulcan mind
That's
meld. Okay. All right, anybody else? Miss Nicely.
I'm not going to add another task force. I just want to add something. All the task force that we've mentioned tonight, can we send out to all the council members in case they want to join into some and are interested in joining up and get with the chair?
Yeah.
That's all I want. I'm not adding another one. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. I wanted to, before we move on, I wanted to throw out the date for you guys to put on your calendar. So we're going to go back to, some of you were on council when we were doing the Saturday. We're going to go back to that. I like the Saturday much better. It gives us more time to dig in and talk about, the plans of each department. So we are scheduling April 15th from 9 to 12. So if you can put that on your calendar, that would be excellent. 9 to 12. All right. Next item on the agenda is the fire code ordinance. Mr. Gatlin.
This
your
is
turn.
the easiest one tonight. So all we're going to be doing is changing one word in the code, or one number, 2012 to 2018. So we just need to update to the most current version, which is the 2018 version.
I'm sorry, I have to ask something. What changes from the 2012 to 2018 version affect businesses and residents?
I'm gonna phone a friend on that one.
I can't tell you that. All I can tell you is we are deputized by the state, and we have to follow the same code that they are following. and they adopted the 2018 code, so we have to adopt it as well.
That's what I thought from when I did my ride-along. Do we have any idea if there's anything significant in there, though, that would impact businesses?
I can double check. Usually, if there's going to be big changes, they'll put them out ahead of time. I have not seen anything come across my desk.
That's fine. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
All right, that concludes our meeting. Do I entertain a motion that we adjourn?
Mayor, I have one thing. Sorry.
Mr. Glenn?
Could you bring that up on the screen? This is just for informational purposes only. Public Works Department has recently found an issue down on Pleasure Isle Drive, and we're going to bring up some photos of it here. And this is just to let you all know kind of what's going on. So what's happening right now is the street is slipping into the creek, and can you? There you go. So you can see there, it's kind of a long slip, but it's affecting the pavement and so on and so forth. So right now, this is something that was not foreseen or budgeted, and it is what we thought was previously a state, within the state right away, and would be handled by the state. We have recently found out that it will not be handled by the state. So we're currently looking into the remedy and a cost estimate for that. We're working with CARE on the possibility of obtaining some more MARF funding that would be allocated for this repair. But right now, we're hoping to buy our time into the next budget year to make that repair. But this is significant, and it could change at any moment. So we may be coming back to council, maybe asking for a budget amendment to take care of this issue. I just wanted to let everybody know ahead of time. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Glenn. Okay, do I entertain a motion that we adjourn? Ms. Nicely, Ms. Reckers, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Have a good evening.